For this question, we'll use the given information to answer this question right here. So let's go ahead and read it. When designing a stairway, an architect can use the riser tread formula 2h plus d equals 25, where h is the riser height, so that's this part right here, and d is the tread depth, so that this part right here is the tread depth, and both of those are in inches. Now, it says the riser heights are the same and the tread depths are the same for all steps in that stairway. So let's read further. The number of steps in a stairway is the number of its risers. For example, there are 5 steps in the stairway in the figure above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. Therefore, the total rise for the stairway is a sum of those riser heights. So the total rise is a sum of the total rise, this one right here, is a sum of these purple lengths right there. So now on to the question. An architect wants to use the riser tread formula to design a stairway with a total rise of 9 feet, a riser height between 7 and 9 inches, and an odd number of steps. With the architect's constraints, which of the following must be the tread depth in inches of that stairway? So this definitely would qualify as one of the harder questions on this exam, because there's just so much information to wade through. So if I were you, I would perhaps not spend too much time on this question. If you really don't understand it, you should probably go and answer everything else that you can, the easier problems, and then if you have time left over, come back and do this problem. But since we have time on this question, let's go ahead and spend time to actually answer it. So first things first, on the question, we were given that the stairway had a total rise of 9 feet. And we also notice that the riser height has to be between 7 and 8 inches. One thing that jumps right out at us is that we have 2 different units. We have feet and inches, and we never can work with 2 different units. So the first order of business is changing these 9 feet to inches. And we can do that by multiplying 9 times 12, because we're given 1 foot is 12 inches. So 9 times 12 gives us 108 inches. So the total rise for the stairway is going to be 108 inches. Further, we don't know how many actual steps we're going to have. So why don't we come up with a variable for that? Let's say x is the number of steps that we have for this build. And then we can define h as the riser height, like how high. This is the riser height. That's actually given to us. We don't have to figure it out. And they're saying that this h value for this build has to be between 7 and 8. It's over here, between 7 and 8. All right. With that said, let's think about this. If we have x steps and you multiply that by the height of each rise, we would get the total rise of 108 inches. So once again, let me repeat that. If you have the riser height, like this part right here, I'm looking at the diagram. If you have this and you multiply it by however many steps you have, that gives you the total rise. So that's why we're doing x times h to get the total rise of 108. And since we're told that the rise height right here has to be between 7 and 8, we can actually come up with this and say, you know what, height has to be bigger than 7 but less than 8. So that's the range that our rise height can be. Why don't we go ahead and solve this little equation right here for the number of steps? In other words, get x by itself. So let's divide both sides by h like that. And we'll find that the number of steps, which is x, is going to be 108, which is the total height, over the rise height. So to look and try to find out how many steps we have, we can do this. We know that at a minimum, we have to have a rise height of 7, that's given. And at a maximum, we have to have a rise height of 8. So what if we did this? What if we took the total height divided by our maximum riser height? That number has to be bigger than 108, which is the total height, divided by the riser height, which we don't know at this point. We just know that it's a number between 7 and 8. And it has to be less than 108 divided by 7, which is the lower end of our riser height. By the way, this 108 over h, we've already worked this out and we know this is actually just x, which is the number of steps. So we can actually change this to x, which is our number of steps. Quick math will show you that 108 divided by 8 is 13.5, but then we can't have 13.5 steps. That would be an incomplete. So why don't we just call this 14? We round up. And then if you do 108 divided by 7, you get 15.4. Again, you can't have a 0.4 of a step. So let's round this up to 15. So that leaves us with the number of steps are going to be between 14 and 15. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense to you at this point. Recall, however, we were told that there has to be an odd number of steps. So we know that we have to go with 15 because 14 is an even number and our number of steps cannot be even. We were told that it has to be odd. So we'll say that we have 15 steps. That means we can take that 15 x value and plug it in right here. So we would have 15 times h equals 108. And to find h, which is our rise height, you want to divide both sides by 15 as shown. And when you plug this into your calculator, you'll find that the height is 7.2. The riser height is 7.2. However, the question is not asking us for the riser height. It's asking for the tread depth. Thankfully, there's an equation that we were given at the beginning, which was 2h plus d equals 25. Well, guess what? We just found out what h is, so we plug this question in here, this number in here, so we'd have 2 times 7.2 plus d equals 25. And when you do the math here, you end up with 14.4 plus d equals 25. And all that's left to do is simply to subtract 14.4 from each side as shown. Of course, you can use a calculator, so you'll find that the answer to this is 10.6 inches, which makes C the answer to this question. Now, you tell me, is this a question you really want to spend time on? I don't think so, because it's too cumbersome to work through and it really takes away from other questions that you could be focusing on and getting a lot more questions right rather than spending time on this one question is what I would highly, highly, highly recommend.